Just kidding. And we are live. Hello, my darling. How are you?
Hello, hello. I'm good. I'm good. I'll let you get all the platforms going here. And while you're doing that, welcome everyone to the Beyond Nutrition Community Podcast. I am your host, Sherry, and you are a host too. And you are.
I am Becky.
Yeah, we're so grateful that you're spending your part of your evening with us. And if you're listening to this on replay, thank you. Our mission is simple, it's to help you move beyond diets and confusion and quick fixes towards a healthier and more sustainable relationship with your body, your health, and your life. Here in our community, we believe that true wellness is about more than just calories, macros, or numbers on a scale. It's about understanding how the body was designed to work, learning to support it instead of fighting against it. And Becky and I know that firsthand. It's also about creating habits that are realistic and sustainable and life giving. Now, whether you are on a journey to improve your nutrition, manage your weight, increase your energy, or simply understand your health on a deeper level, this is a space where we learn, grow, and support one another. So, tonight, we are diving into a fascinating topic that affects far more people than they realize. And we titled this podcast, Why Night Owls Struggle More with Weight Loss and the circadian rhythm connection. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's have a conversation that just might change the way you think about sleep, metabolism, and your overall health. So, welcome.
Yes, welcome, welcome, and welcome to those of you that are listening on Tuesday to the audio only. We are happy to have you here.
Absolutely. So, should we start at the beginning, Becky?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, this is one of my favorite topics, and you know
Mhm.
that. And sometimes I think you just end up and said it to get me going and wind me up. But this is one of the topics that made a very important shift in my progress. Like you said, it wasn't, about the macros. It wasn't calories in, calories out that made the difference for me. It was learning truly what is circadian rhythm. And I've done multiple master classes. Probably something I should end up and do again, but that is
Mhm.
one of the things that I have done is multiple master classes in circadian rhythm, teaching the difference in the transitioning of seasons. So when people think of circadian rhythm, right, they just think of like the light and the dark. They don't
Mhm.
necessarily think about how our body ends up and navigates throughout that, right? Because a lot of us are under man made light, right? We
Yeah.
get up, we turn lights on, we go about our workday, lights are on, we, end our workday and lights are on, right?
Yeah.
So there's never this light and dark cycle or a natural cycle. And so people don't realize or think about the body's internal workings also running on a 24-hour operating system. And ultimately, that is our master clock. The light that we end up when we see and how we deal with these controls. And like I said, they end up and they think that the light and the dark, right? Obviously, most of us, and I say most of us because we do end up and have some that work shift work, so they're up at night, right? My mom did it
Mhm.
for years. I did it when I first started working in healthcare, because low man on totem pole, you get stuck on night shift, right? So
Yeah.
you end up and you think about it just on sleep and wake. Well, that is accurate, and it is certainly part of it. It actually regulates nearly every major biological process that is happening inside our body. And until people really start to end up and connect how every cell in your body has its own little clock, and how we take cues from the master clock, right, the master cycle, and where that is located in the brain in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN for short. That is how that master clock that we end up when we have it in our brain, it uses light, especially natural light, and these different primary signals to coordinate everything else in our body. And the reason why this also ties into weight loss is because your metabolism is part of that. And so when you are kind of fighting this, right, the body starts to become resistant. And people want to often look towards food.
Mhm.
They want to look towards lack of activity or lack of exercise when
Mhm.
we are talking about metabolic conditions. And many times people are creating a resistance before they are ever insulin resistance. That's one of, the metabolic diseases that people will end up to talk about a lot, right? We hear all the time, insulin resistant, insulin resistant. But many times there's other signals, and the thyroid is part of that too. The thyroid, the adrenals, the gut.
Mhm.
People will end up and look towards leaky gut, and they don't realize this gut brain axis that ends up and plays a very important role in this. Um, so essentially, what we're doing all day long, right, is we're asking what time what time to wake up, what time to digest food, what time to release energy, right? Our ATP side of things. Um, but also the body needs to know when it's okay to rest and repair, and when it, can do all of that process too, right? So there's this midpoint with our sleep, and that's where if your sleep is disrupted, your sleep is out of rhythm, right? If you're not getting these signals and keeping consistent, that's one of the biggest things. I'm not asking for, a rigid, strict routine of every night, every morning, sleeping and waking at the same time. But the more you can get that time close and consistent, sleep is like this turn off, right? The body starts to end up and recognize that. And so that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize, or the misconception, if you will, is that sleep is just a period where nothing happens, right?
Right.
But in reality, there's a lot within the body that is happening, and oftentimes it is, if not the most important time of the day where things are happening. You're getting your leptin signaling, your liver, you're getting, a lot of these processes that are happening. And um, once you kind of think about the body, kind of strip things back, right? Don't just think about it with blinders on, but think about, how while we're sleeping, the brain is, processing information from the day. The hormones are being released in balance, the growth hormone, especially. That's one of the biggest things right now that people are looking at, and I'm going to choose my words wisely because I don't want, we've already been kicked off, YouTube once, and I'm
Right.
going to choose words wisely, because you never know when they're going to end up and crack the hammer again. But a lot of people are looking at, substances to end up and increase growth hormone, or, put into their body an increase
Yeah.
of hormone, growth hormone. And that is one of the processes. If you get quality sleep and you're getting that proper sleep at night, growth hormone increases so that it naturally supports the tissue repair and the muscle recovery. Immune cells, there's a lot of times where people are so run down that because of stress, because, everyday life, that their immune system is shot, and they're constantly ill, they're constantly sick, they're
Yes.
constantly dealing with something. And proper sleep ends up and makes, the immune cells become more active and more, resistant to you catching things, essentially. um but also the nervous system shifts also into this parasympathetic. And so when we this is also one of the things that I was going to end up and put a post out today in regards of it, because getting your resting heart rate to lower so that the nervous system is in that recovery mode, even just as long as I've been working on this, I've still been able to improve mine, and it went down. Um, in the last 90 days, my Aura ring, which is a part of our topic for next week with the roundtable, is the wearables and devices and stuff. So I won't go into that, but I've been able to improve that. And so it's never a case of I've made it to, my destination, or I made it to X, Y, and Z, right? Now I can end up and relax, or I can quit working on this. What we teach in the community is creating a sustainable lifestyle, because your body is asking for that. And, even in our sleep, I had mentioned the liver performing its tasks, right? When the body is looking, everyone wants to do cleanses. They want to do, all these different um, protocols, if you will, for detoxification. And that's part of what the liver does at night too. So, when the liver is doing its process, right? If you set your body up, if you're, spacing your evening meal out from bed, if your, you know, body is actually getting that quality sleep, not just quantity sleep, this process has happened naturally, and you'll see better blood sugar regulation also. But again, like I referenced, the leptin is also docking. Um, and those cells are more receptive, so the body knows that it has energy to use, so your metabolism then prepares for the next day. And that's why we often say you don't just build muscle in the gym, you build it while you recover. And
Absolutely.
it's so important. Some people will say the abs are made in the kitchen. Well, it's not necessarily just what you're eating, it's how are you actually digesting and processing that food.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and as you're sitting there and you're listening and to what Becky just said, think about this. Have you ever noticed how naturally tired you become around the same time each night? Because that's an important cue, right, Becky? Oh, she
Mhm.
froze on my end. There, are you
Yeah, so
back?
that's the predictable rhythm, right?
Yes.
I was to say, am I froze?
Nope, you're good.
Imagine that, right? Um, okay, so the body operates on these predictable rhythms, and we can skew those rhythms, like I mentioned before, man-made light, right? You wake up and we're in these lights. Our ancestors didn't have that. They didn't have alarm clocks. They didn't have smartphones. They didn't have, bright overhead light. If anyone has watched our podcast and watched me, in the wintertime, you'll see that I'm sitting with not only my salt lamp, but I'm sitting with a red light, because when your body is anticipating this predictable rhythm, the day naturally flows with the rising of the sun in the morning. Seeing that bright morning light, it signals it's a day, it's time to wake up, it's time to move, it's time to eat, it's time to be alert, right? But on the flip side of that, when the sun's setting in the west, right, that darkness is signaling it's time to slow down, it's time for that repair that I just mentioned, that recovery and these processes. But if you're being exposed to, normal blue light on a computer or overhead blue light from standard light bulbs, that is skewing your system into believing that the lux of light is still a brighter intensity. And so those biological processes haven't changed, or aren't going to end up in change for you if you are constantly exposing yourself to this bright light until midnight, or you sit there, doom scrolling your phone, right, in bed, answering emails at 10 p.m. and expect your brain to instantly fall asleep and do those processes it needs. Um, our biology has simply adapted to the stimulus that we're giving it. And by adapted, I mean, we're seeing a lot of conditions, right? We're seeing the metabolic issues. And so the biggest thing is, that our body is working with the signals we're providing it. And if you're not seeing the goals that you're wanting, sleep is a signal, light is a signal, meal timing. We talk about that a lot in the community too, of eating within that, first 30 to 60 minutes of being awake. These are all signals. So the body, again, a lot of times people will say, well, I'm not hungry in the morning. Well, that's because your body hasn't got that predictable routine. And many times cortisol is overplaying a factor. I just had a coaching client this last week that told me shifting coffee. Most people get up first thing in the morning and drink a cup of coffee, right? It's a habit. But yet, I've been trying, to get her to shift that coffee till after food and after being up for a while. And she finally, gave it the good old college try, right? And the clarity, the mental clarity that has come from shifting that, again, it's she there's two sides of that, right? Because the body thought it was predicting, right? The normal rhythm, the habitual side of it, but she has found that clarity. She has found that focus just by moving the coffee. She didn't give it up. She just moved it. And that has been so huge in how she has felt in the morning, yet throughout her workday.
Yeah.
So, it's just some of those things that if a person can ask themselves if sleep is when your body is repairing and restoring, and nearly every system that supports the metabolism, are you giving your body enough time to actually do what it needs to work?
Right.
How many
Well,
times have we heard clients say, I sleep 4 hours? It's not
yeah,
enough time.
yeah. I was gonna say, Becky and I both drink coffee, but I don't start drinking my coffee and I wake up about 6 a.m. Um, I'm not even having my first sip of coffee until like 8 o'clock. Um, so and it was so funny. Do you remember when you heard that too, right? And you drink coffee as well, Becky. I know you and your husband both do. What time do you start your coffee?
I think I froze again. So my the actual coffee ends up and gets
Yeah.
started early, but what time do I actually drink
Mhm.
my coffee? It's usually by the time I'm drinking my coffee, it's about 9 in the morning.
Yeah. And you wake up about the same time too, right? 6, 6:30?
Yeah, I'm up anywhere about 6:30. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and everybody, I mean, the horror of telling people to wait to drink their coffee is met with serious resistance. But like your client
Mm-hmm.
found, right, there's a mental clarity to it. It's not dumping that caffeine um, right when you wake up and allowing the natural processes of your body to take effect, the cortisol rise, that natural cortisol rise to get you up and moving and going. So, just kind of a to help the audience a little, if you kind of want to know how to start tracking for the next 7 days, track when you feel most alert. Note that time. Note when cravings appear. Is it, 3 o'clock? Is it 8 o'clock at night? When is your energy crashings occur? I can promise you, I haven't had an afternoon crash in years. That 2, 3 o'clock slump. It's funny. I look at my coworker and she's over there with her head almost on the desk, and I'm kind of chuckling because it's like I remember what that was like, right? So track that. When is that energy crashing occurring? And then when you become sleepy. So if you just kind of track that every day for the next 7 days, that's going to kind of give you some kind of clues on what your body's telling you. So, why, Becky, does light matter so much? I mean, that's a basic question, but it's not.
Yeah. If I ask, right, what controls the circadian rhythm that we just talked about, a lot of people would be like, well, you just said sleep, right? Sleep is an important process. But surprisingly, one of the biggest things that we work on with clients too is not just making sure your sleep and your wind down routine and all of that is important, but getting the morning light, because light is your primary driver. It is the single most powerful environmental signal that your brain can end up and receive each day. And if someone can't exercise, someone, even if they're just eating whole food, that is one of the things that I will end up and tell them to do every morning when sunlight, get out, even if you can just get out for 5 minutes, getting that 5 minutes of sunlight in your eyes. So we end up, we have these, specialized cells, right, in the retina that send that message directly to the brain. And that message is simply, hey, it's daytime. It's time to start our daytime process. But what typically happens is people are, staying up late. So then they end up and they set an alarm clock, and, they're smashing the alarm clock. They're up, they're, go, 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 right? They're constantly busy. And as soon as their feet hit the floor, that cortisol is jacking up. And that is where blood sugar is going to end up and follow. You're going to see the dawn effect or dawn phenomenon, whatever you want to end up and call it, right? And so this whole process can be regulated, and it can't doesn't mean that you need to take special supplements to regulate your cortisol or anything like that. Yes, eating right um, can be beneficial too. We've seen that in you, right, with your blood sugar and shifting that morning meal. But morning light also sets the time for everything that follows the next 12 to 16 hours. It helps with regulating that cortisol into a natural wake. So when we look at circadian rhythm, the sun comes up right over the horizon, and then it peaks at like solar noon, and then it comes back down in the west. It looks like a barcode of light. So it goes from red, orange, yellow, into blue and backwards, right? But so does your normal hormone rhythms. You should end up and have this natural rise. Everyone talks about cortisol, and they make cortisol be the villain. Cortisol isn't the villain of the body. It is a normal hormone of the body. It is our wake up hormone. And so what we want is this natural rise. We don't want that peak. We don't want that dawn effect to happen. We want this natural rise of cortisol to happen in the morning, it to peak between, about 12ish to 2, and then it starts coming down. What happens when it comes down? The natural rhythm of melatonin takes over, right? So everything is kind of on this roller coaster wave system, if you will. And what happens if we end up and, have melatonin that is coming out? That predictability, right? The body predicts once it starts to feel the melatonin kick in, sleep. So, that's where the cycle starts. And what happens when you're being exposed to a bunch of blue light, or you're doing that, scrolling on your phone? Your body is not going to release that melatonin. And so it doesn't get that proper signal, which then delays it. So a lot of these other processes, such as the growth hormone, regulation of body temperature, blood sugar, because blood sugar is going to go up, right? Eating too close to bed is going to throw these signals off as well. So your energy production, that's where people will be, groggy the next day because they're just not getting the signal. Um, and it's like setting the clock on a microwave, if you will, after a power outage, right? If the clock is wrong at the beginning of the day, everything else is going to end up and be off, right? The clock isn't going to be accurate. And that's the same thing with a lot of these other processes. If you end up and delay the melatonin, all these other processes are going to be off. If you don't get that morning light, right? This is why it's so important to get that morning light, and why light matters throughout the day. Because if you get that morning light, we wake up, we go outside, ideally, right? You want to end up and be grounding and all of that. But again, going back to modern society, one of the biggest mistakes many of us make is our morning. We wake up, our feet hit the floor, we're looking at our phones, we're checking our phones, we're listening to music, we're, whatever, scrolling while you're sitting on the toilet. I can't tell you how many men are notorious for that. Sorry, men. but but you are. I don't like taking my phone in the bathroom with me, but y'all are notorious for sitting there. And even my kids will take their phone in the bathroom because they can't seem to shower without music nowadays. It's, in my opinion, ridiculous. But then we're, going out to the kitchen and you're kicking on, overhead light, you're making coffee, you're grabbing your lunch for the day, and then you're, in your car driving to work, you sit in an office under blue light all day, right?
Yep.
Meanwhile, the brain is still waiting for the strongest signal that it needs to receive from the natural sunlight. That morning sunlight is the highest intensity of red and infrared light that your body is naturally going to receive. So you'll hear a lot of, the biohackers with their red lights and all of that. Okay, I have a red light. I think my red light is great. It is a supplemental tool to use. There is nothing that is going to override the natural rhythm itself. And so even on overcast mornings, even on rainy mornings, I posted a video the other day on my Instagram because I was standing in my outdoor kitchen because it was raining. And that lighting is dramatically different than any indoor lighting you're going to end up get. So again, if the best that you can do, again, right, the good, better, best scenario, we've referenced this on previous podcasts. If the best that you can do is get to a window and open a window, and then maybe it's get to the door and open the door, and then it's outside, right? We meet clients where they are in this process, but that morning exposure is going to help to anchor. And it is so important to get that light. And it is one of the simplest habits that you can end up and put in there is that morning light. Now, again, on the flip side, don't forget to end up and block that blue light. I'll never forget, right, the feeling that you had the first time I did the master class and
Yep.
I, had you wear your blue blockers and you're like, what kind of, sorcery is this that you just drugged me or something? And all I did
Well,
was put glasses on.
yeah, yeah, it was the red lens, and I put it on about an hour before bed. Now, mind you, this had been, I don't know, early on in my journey. And then we met, like I said, you did the master class. Bless you for doing that because I asked you the same questions probably 500,000 times over and over. So I finally got a pair of the red lens blue blocking glasses, and you were like, put it on an hour, 30 minutes to an hour before bed. So I did, right? I have a picture still of me sitting with those on, and it felt like somebody thumped me in the head. Like my whole body just felt like I was done. I mean, and my husband had the TV going, but I'm wearing these red lens, I think the lamp was on. I was done. My body literally just kind of, I just felt this thud, and it was like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And that's the best way I can describe. But before that, it always used to just aggravate the snot out of me, right? Oh, you gotta have sleep. Oh, you gotta have sleep. And I'm like, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm not shutting down. I can't sleep. I don't sleep good. I don't understand. And it's right. I didn't understand.
Yep. And that was the wired but tired. There's a lot of people, and
Hmm.
that's why we get the, evening doom scrolling on, social media is because one, they're getting, that whole dopamine side of things, but they're also, not able to sleep. So let's end up, scrolling, and your brain is interpreting much of that bright light as daytime light, and
Yeah.
it is basically signaling the same thing. So instead of, preparing for sleep, it's receiving the message, stay awake, it's daytime, right? And yeah, as a result, the melatonin again is delayed, making it harder to fall asleep, making that sleep quality. We have people or clients, community members too, that they may end up and get good sleep, but when you look at the deepness of sleep, right, the deep sleep, the REM sleep, that actual quality, not just the quantity, it's short. It may only be a few minutes that they're getting in deep sleep, and that amount of time isn't time for the body to recover. It needs some of those deeper, aspects, and that it simply means that, biology hasn't evolved as technology, right? And
Mhm.
so it's this whole light, the light sign was, or the light signal was, like I said, a very important part. And I've shared pictures over the time. It's not just the only, it's not the only piece, but it is a very important piece of morning light and improving our sleep. And that's one of the biggest things that made a difference. Also, as far as my weight loss, right? Which I want to say is like 67 pounds, that I've been able to lose. And that's part of supporting these healthy hormone rhythms. Because one, anyone that has ever listened to me or followed my information, I don't do a lot of supplements. Well, I don't do any supplements. I do electrolytes, minerals, and my hydrogen water. So those are the extent of, medications and supplements. But the body has this way of supporting the natural rhythms, and if you balance some of the underlying, right, look at the downstream effects of how and why light is so important in these other processes, because the body is, it's going to end up and down regulate thyroid, it's going to end up and affect the adrenals, it's going to, affect a lot of these other areas. And no matter how much, mud water or mushroom coffee you end up and you give the body to support the cortisol, or no matter how much, supplemental form, you can't fix something that is broken on the underneath side, right? And that's where, like I said, the light is so important. So even just stepping outside, um, tomorrow morning, I'll challenge. I'll let you end up
There we
and, give some tips, but I challenge people, even just take 5 minutes tomorrow morning.
Yep. Yep. First thing, get up, don't turn any lights on, open your door and stand in the doorway and get that natural light. Don't touch your phone. Don't pick that phone up. Don't look at it. Get the first light, um, you know, when you wake up. Dim the lights 2 hours before bed. Put your phone down. Put your devices down. Turn the TV off. Reduce your evening screen exposure. We've had challenges on that in the BNC community. That was one of the toughest things that our community members said was putting, what was it, an hour? Was that the challenge, Becky? An hour before bed? We
Mm-hmm.
said,
Mm-hmm.
cut your devices off. And people really had a hard time with that. So what happens to our bodies when we don't get enough sleep? So it's not, so I'm a night owl, but now I got to get up and be in a morning person world, right? So the insufficient sleep associates like with increased hunger, cravings, anxiety, satiety. It lowers your satiety, lowers your insulin sensitivity. You're less active, poor metabolic health. This is where the kind of the tie-in on why you're not losing weight. But let's kind of dive a little deeper into what happens when you don't get enough sleep. We're running on 4 and 5, 6 hours.
Yeah. So that's where many times we hear it, especially, in other dietary camps that, oh, my body is, just more efficient at burning fuel and I don't need sleep, right? But one part of this also, when we look at it, sleep is your greatest metabolic tool. So sleep is so important to, again, kind of go back to, the first part of this, right, where the body, the functions that happen, right, it's not just the recovery side of things, but it's also where the appetite changes, after a poor night's sleep. Um you suddenly have a bunch of cravings, right? Maybe you're, not hungry all day, but then you get to the night and your willpower ends up and disappears, and you start, snacking and gorging in the evening, right? Sleep deprivation influences those hormones that regulate the hunger and the fullness, the ghrelin, if you will, the leptin and the ghrelin. And that's where many people notice an increase of hunger, stronger desire for highly processed foods. So that's one thing that I feel is very important to end up and talk about. So carbs, when people talk about adding carbs back in, many people think of, processed foods. They think of the breads, the pasta, the grains, the gluten, all of that type of thing. When we in the BNC community, we talk about carbs, we're talking about whole food carbs. And so that's your fruits, your vegetables, um, those type of things, right? Not these snack foods that a lot of times, because people aren't sleeping, they're wanting to eat and crave. And your brain is looking for that quick energy hit. And maybe you end up and feel it at that, 2 p.m. slump, right? Your body has just hit that wall where it's looking for that hunger. And this is, the reason why someone would normally eat a balanced meal, but on the night where they don't sleep very well, or, they find themselves wanting the food addiction side of things, right? The sweets, the chips, the extra caffeine, those type of things. And so blood sugar becomes less efficient also. So going back to, the insulin resistance side of things, sleep affects how your body responds to the glucose. So if you are someone that has elevated glucose, or, sensitivity with the glucose, you may, I just seen April's comment, as a type 1, sleep is everything. Yes, absolutely. um, and, when sleep is constantly shortened or inconsistent, right, your cells become less responsive to the insulin, meaning that it takes more effort for the body to manage that same blood sugar. And this is where we talk to them about, controlling the variables, right? Because it doesn't mean that just one night of bad sleep causes diabetes. That's not what we're saying. But chronic sleep deprivation can place that extra stress, extra cortisol. This is where cortisol becomes an issue, right, on these metabolic systems over time. And it leads to, and is one of the number one reasons why people with the metabolic health, and by that we're talking, overweight, we're talking about insulin resistance, we're talking about, a lot of these. But what do people want to end up and blame the blood sugar fluctuation on? Carbs. Carbs end up and get the bad rap. Carbs are the problem. Carbs are the issue. Carbs are, carbs, 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 right? But it's not the carbs that are the reason. It is typically your sleep and your lifestyle that is leading to this. If you give your body an adequate, time to recover, and we've done podcasts, seeing April end up and comment. We've done podcasts with her. We've done podcasts with other diabetics also. That if you give your body the right signal and the right cues and the, right food, it tolerates and it levels out and it maintains, whether it's type 1, type 2, or anywhere in between, as a diabetic, but also as a normal human, right? Not that y'all aren't normal, we love you. But as a, someone like myself, right, that was just pre-diabetic, I had an elevated blood sugar, but I had a heck of a lot of other issues. But um, I was never diagnosed as a diabetic, but it still created blood sugar issues. But it didn't matter how much elimination I did, or how much ketoing I did, or whatever the case may be. Right? That's why I say it. Nutrition is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. Light is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. And that's where, again, the sleep side of things, right, it changes your behavior also. So a lot of times people, not only, and Sly can talk about this in our roundtable too when we're discussing the wearables, but the addiction side, the mental health side, and why that all goes downhill. But again, people end up and want to blame other things, right? They don't want to end up and blame what is truly going on and how sleep influences our health. And this is where the body and what we do, even if people skip the morning light, or maybe they decide not to strength train, right? They grab takeout. They, maybe they're reaching for, instead of making sure they get enough quality nutrition through the day, they're tired, so they end up and they reach for that extra coffee, or they drive through Starbucks and get, a sugar loaded 800 plus calorie drink, right? And that sets them up on this whole, spike and valley. But that is a normal response, is the fatigue. When you don't give your body what it needs, this is why sleep is so influential. And also setting up a quality bedroom, right? Making it your sanctuary, making sure that it's dark, making sure that it's cool, making sure, that it is peaceful. I Doing breath work before going to bed, right? Think of it like you are taking care of yourself in a way that is a bigger picture. It's not just about the calories, it's not just the macros, it's not just the workout. They're all important, but it's this whole system. Zoom out, right? We're taking care of this whole system, and how light influences our sleep, which influences our hormones, which influence the appetite, which influences the blood sugar. Blood sugar influences energy, right? See how this whole thing is all interconnected. And it's this whole matrix, if you will, of the body. And if I could just tell people what even just 1 extra hour of quality sleep, how it would change their energy, how it would support their workouts, so they're not bonking in a workout, so they're not hitting that wall. So their cravings, right? You, again, nutritional spaces. You'll end up in here food noise, right? So we're now using certain products because of food noise, or to manage their cravings. Where if they work on some of these foundations and these natural processes, you can regulate your hormones in your gut bacteria. You can regulate, these cravings. But many people, they don't start treating sleep as part of their health plan, then something is going to end up and get squeezed over time, and they're going to end up and not see the goals that they're after. So yeah, that's, if they,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, sorry, I had to reach down and get my cat because he was attacking me. Yeah, you know, that's one of the things both of us do as coaches is sleep is first and foremost. So if you work with either one of us, that is going to be one of the first things we work on before your nutrition.
Hmm.
And it surprises people. It actually surprises folks. So I'm going to give another action step to the audience. So for the next week, okay, go to bed 30 minutes earlier. Put your phone down. turn off the light. Even if you don't fall asleep in that 30 minutes, go lay down, relax, deep breathing. Put your legs up and up on the wall, right? And really, um, treat your sleep like you treat your nutrition. It is that important. So, we've talked about that hunger hormone connection, the ghrelin and the leptin, but let's notch it back down. What is ghrelin, Becky, and what is leptin? Like literally, let's make it real baby step, and then where that sleep deprivation disrupts that.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite areas, but that so the ghrelin is obviously telling us that we're hungry, right? It's often called by many people in layman's terms the hunger hormone, and it is produced primarily in the stomach. But again, remember our stomach is our second brain, right? So if people think of ghrelin as the body's reminder system, right? The stomach is empty, ghrelin levels end up and begin to rise. That rise sends a signal that hey, it's time to eat, right? And so that is also on a side tangent here. That is also where people end up and also start to look at food like it is a reward system. So that's why when people get so disconnected with these natural rhythms, because they eat when they're angry, they eat when they're lonely, they eat when they're tired. Well, if you're not sleeping, you end up tired, right? So food becomes more of a substance, if you will, right? And so it's not this true hunger that the body and the brain is actually experiencing. And your brain is seeking out that energy, and it's seeking out that dopamine. It's seeking out, right? Where if you're actually eating when you're hungry and true hunger, there you'll notice there's a rhythm, and that is also because the leptin is the satiety, the fullness hormone. But again, like I've said before, it is produced in our sleep, and so it is also produced, in by our fat cells. And so its job is the opposite. When we look at things like even insulin and melatonin, right? They're opposing of each other. If your insulin's up, you're not going to end up and have, the melatonin taking over at night for sleep. Um, the same thing when leptin sends this message that hey, we have enough, we have energy stored, you can stop eating now. Think of it, as a fuel gauge, if you will, of a car, right? If your gas tank is full, you're not going to be able to end up and put more in, right? It's going to start spilling out. um, and that's where, so in when leptin is signaling and working well, it's easier to recognize that I'm full and not continue to eat until you're Thanksgiving full and overly stuffed. And the brain is also receiving this, and these hormones kind of work as a team. Under normal, again, we're sleeping good, we're getting our light. The leptin and ghrelin work great. Before a meal, the ghrelin raises, hunger increases, you eat your food. After eating, that ghrelin falls, leptin and the other, safety signals, aka cortisol, right, end up and start to leptin increases, cortisol ends up and decreases, and so the hunger ends up and decreases, the satisfaction returns, we are more content. We shouldn't necessarily eat until we're overly stuffed. Our stomach should end up and get that stretch receptor, that fullness, and so your digestive system and your brain start doing what it needs to do throughout the whole, electron transport chain of converting what you just took in. But this is also where light is important, and I could do a whole podcast on the fact of chrononutrition in regards of what you are eating. I know we're already going to have to break this one into two segments because I'm watching the time and I'm like, yep, she set me up on this one because I'm not going to get to, we'll make it two parts. So
What
we'll just
we
leave it at
will.
that.
Yeah, yeah, let's do that. And I knew when I got the
I know what you were
title.
doing.
I knew what I was doing, but yeah. But it's so important, right?
It is.
And that's why I just felt, I know sometimes we sound like broken records. But it it truly, so I'm going to go off topic here for a moment, and I'm going to ask you a personal question. When you started putting all these practices into play personally, when you first started versus now, what have you seen?
Oh, I've seen a whole transformation as far as inflammation in the body, my focus, my clarity, my, just the whole overall. Um, obviously the obviously the Lisa, it just delays the gastric empty. The inflammation has definitely gone down. I feel better. I have more energy. Obviously, the weight loss side, like I said, the last I weighed myself, it was 67 pounds. Um, Now, again, that is looking at the overall, and that's looking at not just the circadian, because I got certified in the circadian side back in 21, but I was also doing keto, right? I was doing that side of things, and that was still not providing enough on the nutrition side, where I had to look at opening the nutritional, making sure I wasn't deficient essentially, and getting the nutrients, because we're electric beings, right? Just like we're running on light, we're running on, electricity, we're running on this whole ATP process that is happening. And when I put it all together, the difference that I can now say I see in opening it up and being more consistent with it is so pivotal in a difference. It's like a 180 difference in what I've seen.
Absolutely. Um, I've seen a big change, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you've worked on it for years,
Mm-hmm.
and so have I. And the we weren't perfect when we started. One of the things I do to get natural light in the morning, and poor Becky has to listen to my window down when I'm driving to work in the morning. But I don't have sunglasses. I don't wear my glasses, sunglasses. Like it's natural light. That's a non-negotiable at this point. It's been a non-negotiable. But I remember again the first time I heard Becky say, "Oh, you need to get up and see the sunrise." And I'm like, "Get out of here. That ain't happening." Because remember, I'm not sleeping. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not going to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm certainly not getting up at five something in the morning to see the sunrise. So there was a huge disconnect there that I frankly had to work on. So I think, Becky, what we're going to do is we're going to cut it here. We're going to pick it up on a part two of this. It won't be next week. Next week is our coaches round table. What do you think? Do you think that's a good plan? We'll pick up part two on this one.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So as we wrap up part one, which we didn't know we were going to do a part two, but this is what happens when you do live podcasts. We hope that we've already given you some really important reminders on how your body is not working against you. It is actually communicating with you. And so when you start to understand your sleep patterns and your circadian rhythms and your body's natural signals, um, it can be one of the most powerful steps toward lasting health and increased energy and sustainable weight loss. So, thank you for spending your time with us here in the Beyond Nutrition Community podcast. Now, if you found this conversation really valuable, we ask that you take a moment to like and subscribe. Share this podcast with someone who can benefit from hearing it. Your support helps us reach more people who are looking for real answers and a healthier path forward. Now, here's the real key here. If you are ready to go deeper, beyond this podcast, beyond part one, beyond part two, right? We invite you to join the BNC community. Inside our community, what you will find will be ongoing education and tools and resources and accountability and the support of experienced coaches who can help you apply what you're learning on your own health journey because knowledge truly is powerful. But transformation happens when you have the guidance and support and the community to put that knowledge into action. You do not have to do this alone. And that's why we have the BNC community. So, for those of you not watching and you're listening, you can go to www.bncommunity.com. That's Beyond Nutrition Community. Uh, I just hacked that up.
Be,
Anyway,
be a nutrition coaching community.
coaching community. There we go. I forgot my other C there in it. So bncommunity.com. So we invite you to join us. We will see you next week then for another episode of our podcast. This is going to be our popular coaches roundtable. It's going to be 4 coaches from different backgrounds and life experiences. We're going to come together and we're going to discuss the wearable revolution, what your wearable devices, that's almost a tongue twister, what your wearable devices know before your medical team does. Ooh, so it's sure to be an insightful conversation and you won't want to miss that. So we do go live every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for those of you listening on iHeartRadio and Apple Podcast and Spotify and the other podcast platforms. New episodes are uploaded every Tuesday morning. That's Becky's to-do list on Tuesday mornings. That's after she goes and gets her light outside. So just so everyone knows, she's not jumping on the computer immediately. So until then, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, you don't have to navigate your health journey alone. We will see you this week inside the BNC community and on our next episode of the Beyond Nutrition Community podcast. Any last things you want to say, Becky?
Just if you have any questions after listening to this part one, since you will have a couple weeks before part two, definitely put them in the comments section, whether it's over there on Instagram, Rumble, or any Twitch anywhere above. Also, to all you dear sweet friends over here on YouTube, same thing goes for you. Definitely leave a comment and let us know if you have any questions or want us to expand on anything that we talked about during this in part two. I look forward to seeing you all next week for the Coaches Roundtable.